Look how nice you look, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to speak with you, Daniel. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Why is it called the Nocturnal? Am I only supposed to read this at night?
Maybe because we don't sleep and we just cover everything at all times. So
That's a better answer.
it's a bit of a mystery, but I want to dive in. It's congratulations on your lead role in the Hot Zone Anthrax. Your character is absolutely phenomenal. Can you tell me what it was like for you playing an FBI special agent?
Uh, it was a big challenge, and a challenge that I took seriously and I undertook with respect. You know, these are some hardworking people who really helped our country when we were in need, and they were real people who died as a result of these attacks. So I approached it with a lot of reverence and respect.
You're known for your roles in shows like Lost and Hawaii Five-O, and only recently we've seen Asian American lead actors in Hollywood within the past few years. Can you talk about the importance of diversity and representation and what that means for you?
Well, I think the very fact that the person who was chosen to represent the FBI in as a lead investigator in a case that was so central and crucial to our country's identity at the time was someone who looks like me says a lot about progress. I don't think that 10 years ago, if we were casting this show, that my name would have been the first on the list, or that it would have been a person of color who would be chosen to represent the FBI. So I think as important as dialogue is when it comes to raising awareness of issues like this, what speaks louder is actions. And, the fact that you were actually seeing, representation at the highest levels and not just talking about it is a really positive step.
It's been a tough year with the pandemic, and unfortunately, the number of hate crimes against Asian Americans skyrocketed. Thank you for being a huge voice in the community against these horrific acts. Is there a message you'd like to give after this crazy year?
Wow. Gosh, do we have an hour? I would say that one, um, I'm, I'm heartened by the fact that through incredibly tragic events, there have been good things to come of them. And one of the best things is that I think Asian Americans are more vocal than ever, more unified than ever. And I think there is an awareness outside of our community of who we are and our place in this country. And I would just say, if there's any message, it's that, you know, we are here as Americans to try and move the narrative forward about inclusion and who is American in a broader context, not just for Asian America. It's for all of us. It's about who is American and defining what that means.
Thank you for sharing that message. It truly means a lot. Earlier this year, you wrote on Twitter that after 31 years, this was your first series lead. Is there a message you'd like to give to aspiring artists?
Um, sure. I feel like um, in the context of that tweet, I would say nothing is guaranteed, but if you give up, and nothing is guaranteed except if you give up. If you give up, you're guaranteed not to succeed.
You're also an executive producer on The Good Doctor. What's it like being behind the camera on projects as well?
It's really satisfying, really gratifying, I should say. It's important, I think, just to tell our stories and be a part of creating a narrative, whether or not I'm in front of or behind the camera. It's not necessary for me to be in front in order for me to feel like I'm being creative. And I love the fact that The Good Doctor uh, doesn't include me in any kind of significant way on screen, because there are stories to tell that may not be about me or include me. And that's 100% okay.
Well, thank you so much again for your time. It's been such a pleasure. I can't wait for everyone to see the Hot Zone Anthrax. And also, congrats on being casted for the live action Avatar. I'm so excited to see you in many more projects. So thank you so much again for your time.
That'll be a lot of fun. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you. Hope to speak with you again. How are you doing today?
Good, Stephanie. How are you doing?
Great. Tony Goldwyn, the Hot Zone Anthrax was such an incredible series. What was it like playing Dr. Bruce?
Well, thank you. It was fascinating, honestly, and kind of disturbing. Bruce Ivans is for people that haven't seen the show, was the lead lead researcher on anthrax at the time of the anthrax attacks in 2001. And he's a guy who, when you first meet him, he's a very sweet, kind of eccentric, brilliant, weird dude who everybody kind of loves. But as the series progresses, you realize there are many sides to this guy, and he's someone who actually is suffering from some very severe mental illness. And he gets obsessed with and then sort of sucked into this long, 6-year investigation into these crimes, and it ends up kind of destroying his life. And it's it's an amazing story. I remembered vividly when the anthrax attacks happened, but I did not know so much of this story because it kind of got buried with, the fact that we went to war in the Middle East and all of that. And I think people are going to see a lot of really surprising stuff in this show.
Your character was truly so fascinating.
Thanks.
It's funny that you said that because he's such a fun loving guy in the beginning. I watched the entire series. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but I definitely wrote down a note like, oh, his juggling skills are like really good. And like, I really enjoyed your character. And it was, I love these kinds of series. So this was awesome. I wanted to also ask, the series is inspired by true events during the 2001 anthrax attacks, like you mentioned. How is it making the show about anthrax during the COVID-19 pandemic?
It was just surreal. I mean, we were in full lockdown. We shot this show in Toronto from February to June of this year. So it was before vaccines were in wide supply. And as you may know, the film and television industry has really intense protocols where everyone's masked and shielded and tested constantly, and so it's very difficult to move through a workday, as everyone can relate to. But also Toronto was in a total lockdown while we were there, so it was so the invisible enemy was still very much out there. So to be living through this and be telling the story of a time when there was a biological agent that may have been in wide distribution and no one knew if it was going to arrive in your mailbox and kill you and your children, that was real. So it's something that seems like the stuff of science fiction, but now we've all lived through it. And then beyond that, as a result of that panic, all of the misinformation that comes out about something, and what the media grabs onto, and the wrong theories that develop, and the manipulation of scientific evidence and scientific data for different people's agendas, and the pressures on our leadership to get it right, and then they get it wrong. All of these things we're wrestling with now. So this series is more topical than ever 20 years later.
There were definitely some chilling moments during the series, and I did see a lot of parallels from now until what happened back in 2001, like you were mentioning. Your character definitely had some intense scenes in the shows. Did you have to do any research to prepare for your role?
Yeah, I did a lot. Bruce is so different than me, and there's only so much I could get from just reading the scripts. And I couldn't, he's no longer with us, so I couldn't talk to him. I didn't feel comfortable reaching out to his family because as people who see the show, there's a lot of very sensitive stuff that comes out. So I read as much as I could about him, and I dove into the internet, and I read a very interesting biography that was written about him called Mirage Man by a journalist for the Los Angeles Times that gave just a huge amount of information about his childhood and his relationship with his mother that was deeply traumatic and kind of the source of his mental illness, and many events that we dramatize in the show, but with a lot of detail. So that was super valuable. I spoke to a psychiatrist friend of mine at length about some of the mental conditions that Bruce had in terms of the mental illness specifically that he suffered from. I just spent a lot of time just thinking about the many contrasts of this guy, and and how to find my way kind of into his heart, you know, without any judgment. And I learned to juggle, which I didn't really know how to do because Bruce was a master juggler and loved to show off for people. So that was
definitely a fun aspect about him. And you played him so well. So thank you so much again for your time. I'm so excited for everyone to watch The Hot Zone, Anthrax. And I also want to say congrats on your role in King Richard. So have a great day.
Yeah, that's another great project.
Hi, how's it going today?
It goes well today. And you? Where are you?
I'm in New York, so it's about to be cold in probably next week.
My daughter's there, so she's been telling me how she's had to go out and go to North Face and get jackets. So yeah.
Yes, we're preparing for that weather. But Harry Hamlin, you play NBC anchor Tom Brokaw in the scientific thriller The Hot Zone, Anthrax. Can you tell me a little bit about your character in the show?
Well, Tom Brokaw, you know, is an iconic news broadcaster. I actually saw him when he first started broadcasting for KNBC in Los Angeles when I was 13 years old. So I've been a fan of Tom Brokaw's for a long, long time. That was back in the 60s. He's a very level-headed guy who was targeted by presumably a domestic terrorist who was out to get him and out to get all the news broadcasters at the time and disrupt the whole Eastern Corridor. In fact, back then, I remember it absolutely. It was right after 9/11, and I actually canceled a trip that I had to the East Coast from LA because of the Anthrax attack.
I was going to ask you that because, you know, the series is inspired by true events after the 9/11 attacks happened. And America just marked their 20-year mark since that tragic day happened. Do you remember any other details that happened to you during that day?
Sure. Well, you're talking about the Anthrax attack then? Yes. And if you are, then I remember that we were told to go out and buy duct tape. I think it was even Don Rumsfeld who mentioned that in a news conference once. He said, you know, someone asked him if gas masks would work, and he said, well, sure, gas masks work. And what if a crop duster went over your town and distributed anthrax? And he said, well, if you've got duct tape and you duct tape your windows up, you know, you can keep the anthrax out. And so I went out and bought a whole lot of duct tape. I still have a whole lot of that duct tape. I never used it.
This series was truly incredible. And I'm sure everyone remembered that time very vividly. It was such a crazy time in our country or nation, society. What do you want people to know when watching this series?
Well, it's of course a different time today. I mean, that was back in the day when the world was analog. And the world has changed into a fully digital world now. You don't have to send an envelope with a bunch of powder in it to scare the bejesus out of people. You can just get some code into their laptop or into their, you know, when we have the Internet of Things, you can get code into their refrigerator. You can get code into their thermostat. And you can change everything. So we have to be aware that in the digital world, we're much more vulnerable than we were in the analog world. And we could get poisoned by anthrax in an envelope then, but a lot worse things could happen now. So we have to be very aware all the time, especially with our devices.
And I hope after people watch this series, that they are, you know, take a few things from the show to be more aware. You're known for also your roles in shows like Mad Men. What was it like being in this series compared to your previous roles?
Well, trying to play a real human being and someone that I respect so much, that was a challenge. And I was not sure I wanted to do it at first because I told my agent it was like walking on a tightrope without a net. I mean, I could fall off at any moment and the thing could be a total disaster. So, you know, I took on the challenge anyway because I kind of like to do things that I think are impossible for some reason. I don't know why, but I thought this would be impossible. So. But anyway, it is what it is.
Did you face any other challenges while filming the show?
Well, it was just that we were filming during the pandemic. So it was all, we were having to quarantine because it was shot in Toronto, having to quarantine for 14 days. And then I had one final scene with Daniel Day Kim. And just before we were going to shoot it, he was exposed and had to go into quarantine. So I had to quarantine for another 14 days. So it was kind of an interesting, from that perspective, it was interesting.
How was working with Daniel Day Kim and the rest of the cast?
Oh, he's great. I mean, such a huge fan of Daniel. And I didn't really work with Tony Goldwyn, but I did work with Daniel. It was fantastic. I mean, really professional cast.
Well, thank you so much again for your time. The Hot Zone Anthrax is such an incredible series. And I also have to say, I love seeing your relationship with Real Housewives star Lisa Rinna on social media. You two are amazing. So it's been definitely a pleasure speaking with you today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on season 2 of The Hot Zone. The first season is inspired by true events that happened during the Ebola outbreak. And now the series depicts the 2001 anthrax attacks. Kelly, what can you tell me about this series?
It goes in directions you could never imagine. Whatever you think is going to happen is not what happened, and just keep watching every episode because you will be surprised.
I watched the entire series, and there was definitely a lot of twists and turns, and it was so intriguing, and I absolutely loved it. Brian, why did you decide to focus the second season on the 2001 anthrax attacks?
Well, we wanted to find another story, which, like the first season, was something that you may have heard about, but you really want more details and you don't remember the ending. And especially this season was a story that we all remember the attacks, but there are very few people that kind of seem to remember the details of how it ended. And it's just a really tense psychological thriller, which kind of matched the tone of last year, maybe even up the game a little bit. And so we just thought it was the perfect second season follow-up.
It was definitely a great series to watch. Kelly, the series stars Daniel Day Kim and Tony Goldwyn, along with other amazing actors. Why did you decide to choose Daniel Day Kim and Tony Goldwyn as the 2 main leads?
Well, I'd like to say it was 100% me, and that I knew them, and that I was just like, you got to come do this. But it was actually, we worked with Ridley Scott, and they knew Daniel, so they were the ones that really brought him to the forefront, and he was a perfect fit. And then Brian was the one who was like, right, out of the gate, like, Tony Goldwyn, we got to look at, he's like so great. And then I just think, fate did the rest, and to have Dylan and Dawn. We have just an incredible cast. We were very, very lucky.
I really enjoyed everyone's dynamic on screen. I think it all just blended very well together, and it's just so incredible. I can't say it enough. And it's truly a chilling series. Brian, how was it making a show about anthrax during the COVID-19 pandemic?
It was, no lie, a huge challenge, but mostly for the crew. What the crew had to go through to keep everybody safe, and also just the subject matter skims closely to what we were living on a daily basis. So it was very much forefront in everybody's mind. But trying to shoot a show where everybody, these are huge teams of people, and everybody now is behind a shield, and they're behind a face mask, and they're keeping 6 feet apart while they're trying to whisper to each other during a take. And so it was it was a huge group effort, and we're so proud of everybody that came together and did it.
It was definitely, I felt a lot of parallels with what we're experiencing today and, during these like tragic events, but, I'm glad everyone's going to be able to watch it and, hopefully enjoy it as much as I did. Kelly, why should people watch the show?
Because it's not like anything you could ever predict. I mean, it's a show. First of all, you need to know what happened. Like there was a war going on, 9/11 was going on. So many things we were in such a chaotic state in this country. And then obviously chaos all over the world that I don't think anybody really knows what the inner workings of this case was. And so it's fascinating, but it's also, it's just, you just really can't, I don't know how to say it. You have no idea what's going to happen. Like no clue, episode to episode. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm always engaged in when I'm watching.
It was truly insightful. I think you guys depicted the story, the series, what happened back then so well, and I hope people do enjoy it. And then it turned into kind of more of an insightful series. And then all of a sudden it was like a true crime series, which I enjoy daily. So it's amazing. Everything is awesome. Brian, can we expect a season 3 for the Hot Zone?
definitely have thoughts as to where we might go, but we're just getting through the season first, and then we'll have to see. But hopefully.